None could dispute their dominance until a Terran battleship materialized on the battlefield. Supreme Commander Veric stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Eternal Glory, his four eyes scanning the tactical display with practiced nonchalance. Another planetary system subdued, another civilization brought to heel. The Zarn Dominion had governed this sector of the galaxy for over 3 millennia, and frankly, it was becoming tedious. Status report, Veric commanded, his voice carrying the characteristic rumble of all highborn Zarn. Lieutenant Mira, his second-in-command, approached with a datapad. The Paxian resistance has been crushed, Supreme Commander. Their capital ships attempted to escape to the outer rim, but our Hunter-class vessels intercepted and annihilated them all. Total casualties on our side, 0. Incredible, Veric replied drily. I was so looking forward to drafting condolence messages today. Mira blinked her 3 eyes rapidly, a sign of bewilderment among her species. Despite serving under Veric for 6 cycles, she still struggled with his sarcasm. The THR were renowned for their technical acumen, not their understanding of humor. Sir, there is no requirement for condolence messages if we sustained no casualties, she stated. Veric suppressed a sigh. Yes, Mira, that was the joke. The bridge crew maintained their focus on their stations, though Veric detected the subtle tremor of suppressed laughter from his weapons officer, Draz. At least someone appreciated his wit. Initiate planetary occupation protocols, Veric ordered. The standard package, extract their resources, conscript the able-bodied, and install a puppet government. Be sure to activate the cultural suppression protocols. I don't want another uprising like the one on Nexus 9. Yes, Supreme Commander. Veric turned to gaze out at the stars through the expansive viewport. The Paxian homeworld hung in space below them, once beautiful with its swirling azure oceans and verdant landmasses, now scarred by the precise orbital strikes of the Dominion fleet. It was the same narrative repeated across hundreds of worlds. The Zarn Dominion would arrive, the locals would resist, they would fail, and the mighty war machine would grind on to the next target. Supreme Commander, called out Senior Sensor Officer Trell from his station, I'm detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system. Veric barely turned his head. Anomalies were hardly noteworthy these days. Specify. Sir, it appears to be a wormhole formation, but unlike any we have previously encountered. It's exceptionally stable and, wait, something's emerging through it now. That was marginally more intriguing. Veric moved to the sensor station, his tall, lean form casting a shadow over the officer's displays. Put it on the main viewer. The massive screen shifted from the conquered planet to the distant edge of the system. A swirling vortex of energy had formed, violet and cerulean tendrils of light reaching out into the darkness. As they watched, something materialized from the center, a ship. A single ship. Veric almost chuckled. Was this the best reinforcement the Paxians could muster? One vessel? But as the ship fully emerged from the wormhole, Veric felt a peculiar sensation in his gut. The vessel was unlike anything in the Dominion database. It was colossal, nearly half the size of the Eternal Glory, which itself dwarfed most capital ships. Its design was blocky and utilitarian, devoid of the sweeping elegance of Dominion craft or other known species. Analysis, he ordered. Trell worked his console feverishly. Sir, the vessel is heavily armored with materials I cannot identify. Weapon systems are numerous but of unknown configuration. Our power output, this can't be right. What? Sir, if these readings are correct, their power output exceeds our flagship by a factor of 3. A murmur ran through the bridge. Veric silenced it with a glare. Hail them, he commanded. The communications officer, Pell, nodded. Channel open, sir. Veric straightened his ceremonial armor and faced the viewer. This is Supreme Commander Veric of the Zarn Dominion flagship, Eternal Glory. You have entered Dominion space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately, or be destroyed. The response was not instantaneous. For several moments, the strange ship simply hung in space, seemingly evaluating them. Then, the screen flickered, and Veric found himself looking at an alien unlike any he had previously encountered. The The creature had no scales, no fur, no chitin. Its skin was smooth and pale, with only a patch of dark hair on top of its head. 2 eyes, 1 mouth, 2 arms, primitively symmetrical. It wore some kind of uniform in dark blue, with insignia Veric couldn't recognize. "This is Captain Thomas Jackson of the Terran Federation battleship, Relentless." The alien spoke, its voice oddly monotone compared to the melodic tones of most spacefaring species. "We are here in response to a distress call from the Paxian government." Terran? Veric had never heard of such a species. He quickly checked his personal database. Nothing. "You are too late, Terran," Veric replied, infusing his voice with the contempt he reserved for lesser beings. "The Paxians have already surrendered to the Dominion. I suggest you return to wherever you originated. The Zarn Dominion has ruled this sector for 3,000 years, and we do not tolerate interference." The human's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Commander. The Paxians are now under Terran protection. You are hereby ordered to withdraw your forces from this system immediately." Laughter erupted across the bridge. Even Veric couldn't contain his amusement. "Ordered by you? One ship against a Dominion battle fleet?" He leaned forward. "Perhaps you don't understand your situation, Terran. We have conquered over 500 worlds. Our fleet consists of 30 capital ships and over 200 support vessels. Your bravery is admirable, but foolish." Captain Jackson still showed no emotion. "This is your final warning, Commander. Withdraw, or we will be compelled to remove you." Veric's amusement turned to anger. "You dare threaten the Dominion? Weapons Officer Draz, target their vessel. Let's demonstrate to these Terrans what happens to those who challenge us." "Targeting, sir," Draz replied, his tentacles dancing across his console. "Disruptor banks charged. Quantum torpedoes armed." Veric smiled, baring his razor-sharp teeth. "Fire at will." The Eternal Glory's main disruptor banks discharged, sending brilliant green beams of energy toward the Terran vessel. Simultaneously, a spread of quantum torpedoes launched, trailing blue fire as they accelerated toward their target. What transpired next would alter the course of galactic history forever. Instead of attempting to evade, the Terran ship held position. A moment before impact, a shimmering field appeared around the vessel. The disruptor beam struck this barrier and vanished, not deflected, not absorbed in a flash of energy as most shields would react, but simply ceased to exist. The quantum torpedoes, each capable of devastating a small moon, detonated against the barrier in spectacular fashion. Yet, when the explosions cleared, the Terran ship remained completely unscathed. Silence descended over the bridge. "Impossible," whispered Draz. On the screen, Captain Jackson's expression finally changed into what Veric would later learn was a smile. "I see you have made your choice. Very well." The transmission cut. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, Sensor Officer Trell shouted, "Energy spike from the Terran vessel. Massive weapons signature." The bridge rocked violently as something struck the Eternal Glory with devastating force. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. "Damage report," Veric demanded, steadying himself against a console. "Forward shields down to 30% from a single hit," reported Pell, her voice rising with something Veric had never heard before, fear. "Whatever they hit us with, it nearly penetrated our strongest defenses in one shot." For the first time in his 300-year career as a military commander, Supreme Commander Veric felt a chill of doubt. He stared at the viewscreen, at the blocky, ungraceful Terran ship that had just accomplished what no other species had in 3 millennia. It had hurt them. "All ships," Veric commanded, his voice steady despite his growing unease, "concentrate fire on the Terran vessel. I want it destroyed now." As the Dominion fleet moved to engage the lone battleship, Veric couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, and not for the better. Fleet Admiral Jorn watched from his command vessel as the Dominion ship surrounded the lone Terran battleship. Summoned by the distress call from Supreme Commander Veric, a distress call from Veric, of all people, Jorn had brought 3 additional battle groups to address this unforeseen threat. 87 ships against 1, Jorn remarked to his aide, Commander Plex. Seems almost unsporting, doesn't it? Plex, a stout Zarn with battle scars across his face, nodded gravely. After what they did to the Eternal Glory, sir, I don't think we should take any chances. The Eternal Glory, pride of the Dominion fleet, was currently limping away from the battlefield, its magnificent hull scarred by weapon impacts unlike anything Jorn had seen in his 4 centuries of service. Nearly a third of its systems were offline, and Supreme Commander Veric had been compelled to transfer his flag to Jorn's vessel, the Indomitable. What exactly are we dealing with here? Jorn asked as Veric entered the bridge, his normally immaculate armor dented and stained with the blue blood of injured crew members. Veric's expression was thunderous. They call themselves Terran. They claim to be here to protect the Paxians. Their technology. He hesitated. It's beyond anything we have encountered. Impossible, Jorn replied automatically. The Dominion possesses the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Tell that to my dead crew members, Veric snapped. Their shields simply nullified our weapons, and whatever they fired back with cut through our defenses like they weren't even there. Jorn turned to the tactical display. The Terran ship, the Relentless it was called, remained motionless at the center of the Dominion formation, seemingly unconcerned by the overwhelming force arrayed against it. Have they attempted communication since your exchange? Jorn asked carefully. No, Veric answered. They are just sitting there. Perhaps they are awaiting reinforcements, suggested Plex. If that's the case, we should strike now, Jorn decided. Prepare all ships for simultaneous fire. If their defensive capabilities have limits, this should exceed them. The coordination took only moments through the Dominion's quantum entanglement communication network. 87 ships, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble destroyers, locked their weapons on the solitary Terran vessel. All ships report ready, Admiral, announced the tactical officer. Fire, ordered Jorn, his voice calm and confident. The space around the Relentless erupted with energy as hundreds of weapon systems discharged simultaneously. Disruptor beams, quantum torpedoes, plasma lances, and graviton pulses all converged on the Terran ship in a display of firepower that could have shattered a small planet. The ship's strange shields flared bright white under the assault, expanding outward before contracting inward. For a moment, Jorn thought they had succeeded, that the shields would collapse under the overwhelming barrage. Energy readings from the Terran vessel are fluctuating, reported the sensor officer excitedly. I think their shields are failing. But then, the impossible happened. The white energy surrounding the ship pulsed once, twice, and then expanded outward in a perfect sphere, accelerating as it grew. This wave of energy passed through the Dominion ships like a ripple through water, and as it passed, systems failed. What's happening? Demanded Jorn as alarms blared across his bridge. Consoles sparked and went dark, view screens flickered and died, and the lights dimmed to emergency levels. Some kind of energy pulse, Plex reported frantically, working at his partially functioning console. It's disabled weapons, shields, and propulsion across the entire fleet. We are sitting targets. Jorn stared in disbelief at the main viewer, which showed the Dominion's mighty armada now floating helplessly in space. That's not possible. No weapon could affect so many ships simultaneously without destroying them. Sir, the communications officer called out, we are being hailed by the Terran vessel. Jorn exchanged glances with Veric, who looked as stunned as he felt. Put it through. The face of Captain Jackson appeared on the screen, still wearing that unsettling lack of expression. Admiral Jorn, I presume? Captain Thomas Jackson of the Relentless. I wanted to inform you that we have temporarily disabled your fleet's offensive capabilities. The effect will wear off in approximately 6 hours, by which time I expect you to have begun withdrawal from this system. Jorn bristled at the human's tone. You cannot seriously expect the Dominion to retreat because of one ship's lucky tactics? Jackson's expression hardened slightly. This wasn't luck, Admiral. This was restraint. The pulse we just used was specifically calibrated to disable rather than destroy. We could have just as easily turned your entire fleet into expanding clouds of plasma. He leaned forward. The Terran Federation does not seek conflict with the Zarn Dominion, but we will not allow the continued subjugation of peaceful species like the Paxians. You speak as if you have the authority to dictate terms to an empire that has stood for millennia, Veric interjected. Who are these Terrans to make such demands? We are new to this sector, Jackson admitted, but not new to warfare. The Terran Federation has survived conflicts you couldn't imagine, against enemies that would make your dominion seem like a minor provincial power. Preposterous. Jorn scoffed. If your civilization possessed such power, we would have heard of you before now. Perhaps you should consider why you haven't, Jackson replied cryptically. 6 hours, Admiral. After that, if your ships have not begun to withdraw, we will be compelled to take more permanent measures. The transmission ended. Jorn turned to Veric, his mind racing. We need to contact the High Command. This changes everything. They are bluffing, Veric insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. One ship cannot stand against the might of the Dominion. Then why are we floating helplessly while they dictate terms, countered Jorn. Look at the facts, Veric. They neutralized your flagship with minimal effort. They just disabled our entire fleet without destroying a single vessel. That suggests a level of technological control we can't match. So, we are just going to retreat? Veric's voice rose in disbelief. After 3,000 years of uncontested dominance? Jorn gazed out at the stars, at his crippled fleet, and at the alien ship that had accomplished what countless civilizations had failed to do, bring the Dominion to its knees. No, he said finally. We are going to learn more about these Terrans, and then we are going to bring enough firepower to ensure their complete destruction. He paused. Signal the Phantom. Tell Captain Lazar to maintain stealth and follow the Terran ship when it leaves. We need to find out where these creatures come from. As the orders were relayed, Jorn couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had suddenly become a much more dangerous place, and for the first time in the history of the Zarn Dominion, they weren't at the top of the predatory chain. Captain Lazar of the Phantom, the Dominion's most advanced stealth vessel, maintained a respectful distance from the Terran Battleship Relentless. For 3 days, he had followed the ship as it patrolled the Paxian system, utilizing the Phantom's experimental phase-shifting technology to remain undetected. Status report, Lazar demanded, his crimson scales gleaming under the dim bridge lights. Still no indication they have detected us, Captain, replied Stealth Officer Norak. Their sensor sweeps pass right through our phase field. Lazar nodded, pleased but still cautious. The Terrans had already demonstrated technology beyond Dominion understanding. He wasn't about to underestimate them now. What have we learned? Lazar asked his science officer, a female Zarn named Tasia. Tasia projected a holographic display in the center of the bridge. The Terran vessel's power source is unlike anything in our database. They appear to be using some form of matter-antimatter reaction, but contained in a way that defies our understanding of physics. Their hull composition includes elements not on our periodic table, and their communications. Yes? Lazar prompted when she hesitated. They have been in regular contact with someone, or something, through that wormhole they created. We can't decrypt their transmissions, but the energy signatures suggest they are transmitting massive amounts of data, reporting back to their homeworld. Lazar mused, or perhaps requesting reinforcements. Sir, interrupted the sensor officer, the Terran ship is changing course. They appear to be heading back toward the wormhole coordinates. Lazar leaned forward in his command chair. This could be our opportunity. Prepare to follow them through. If we can locate their homeworld. Captain, with respect, Tasia interjected, we don't know if our phase field will protect us within a wormhole. The gravitational stresses could expose us. Noted, Lazar replied curtly. But these orders come directly from Fleet Admiral Jorn. The Dominion must know where these Terrans come from if we are to neutralize the threat they pose. As they watched, the space ahead of the Relentless distorted, twisting into the now familiar purple and blue vortex of their wormhole technology. The Terran ship accelerated smoothly toward the opening. Match their course and speed, Lazar ordered. Maintain maximum stealth protocols. The Phantom followed at a discreet distance as the Relentless entered the wormhole. As they approached the swirling vortex, Lazar felt an uncharacteristic nervousness. They were about to venture into completely unknown territory, following a vessel that had single-handedly humiliated the Dominion fleet. "Entering wormhole in 3, 2, 1, announced the helm officer. The sensation was disorienting. The Phantom shuddered as it was stretched and compressed simultaneously. The view screen showed swirling colors and impossible geometries as they traveled through spacetime in a way no Dominion ship had experienced before. "Phase field fluctuating," shouted Norak. "We are becoming partially visible on certain energy bands. Compensate." "I'm trying, but the wormhole." The journey ended as abruptly as it had begun. The Phantom emerged into normal space, its systems momentarily offline from the transition. As the view screen reactivated, Lazar's four eyes widened in shock. Before them hung a massive space station, easily 10 times the size of the largest Dominion construct. Around it moved dozens of ships of various designs, some similar to the Relentless, others completely different and beyond comprehension. "And beyond the station. By the First Emperor," whispered Tasia. "That can't be right." The sensors showed a planetary system unlike any they had encountered. The third planet from the central star literally blazed with energy signatures and artificial structures. Orbital platforms, defense satellites, and shipyards extended from the planet's surface out past its single moon. "Population estimate?" Lazar asked, his voice barely audible. Tasia checked her readings twice before answering. Based on energy output and detected structures, approximately 12 billion on the planet alone, with another 3 billion in orbital habitats and installations. 12 billion? The entire Zarn Dominion, spanning hundreds of worlds, had a population of just over 20 billion. This single world. "Sir," Norak interrupted urgently, "our phase field has failed. We are fully visible to their sensors." Before Lazar could respond, the Phantom was engulfed in a blue energy field that froze it in place. On the view screen, they could see multiple Terran vessels converging on their position, including the Relentless. They knew, Lazar realized. They knew we were following them all along. The communications console chimed with a sense of resignation. Lazar nodded to his officer to accept the transmission. Captain Jackson's face appeared, now wearing what Lazar recognized as a smile, though on a Terran it looked more predatory than amused. "Captain Lazar, I presume?" Jackson said. "Welcome to Sol System, home of the Terran Federation. We have been expecting you. How did you detect us?" Lazar demanded. "Phase field technology is impressive," Jackson acknowledged, "but fundamentally flawed. It creates subtle gravitational distortions that our sensors detected the moment you began following us. We allowed it, of course." "Allowed it?" Lazar repeated, confused. "Indeed. Fleet Admiral Jorn needed to understand exactly what he's dealing with. Now you can return and show him." Jackson's expression hardened. "The coordinates for this system will be purged from your navigational computers. You won't find your way back here without our help, but you will be allowed to return to Dominion space with a message." Lazar swallowed his pride. "What message?" "The Terran Federation is expanding into this sector. We will not tolerate the subjugation of sentient species. The Dominion's days of unopposed conquest are over." As Jackson spoke, the view screen split to show multiple views of the Terran system, massive shipyards constructing vessels that dwarfed even the Relentless, defense platforms with weapons that made Dominion technology look primitive by comparison, and something else, hundreds of wormhole gates, stable and permanent, connecting to points unknown. "This is but one world of many in the Federation," Jackson continued. "We would prefer peaceful relations with the Dominion, but we are fully prepared for the alternative. Your leaders have a choice to make." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Phantom in stunned silence. Lazar stared at the images still displayed on the view screen, his mind racing to comprehend the implications. "Sir," Tasia said quietly, "if these readings are accurate, and this is just one of their worlds." "I know," Lazar replied grimly. "The Dominion isn't facing a new species, we are facing an interstellar power that might be stronger than we are." He straightened in his chair.
Prepare a complete report for Fleet Admiral Jorn.
Every detail, every scan, every word spoken.
The High Command needs to know exactly what we are dealing with.
As the Phantom was escorted away from the Terran homeworld by a squadron of ships even more impressive than the Relentless, Lazar gazed back at the shining blue planet. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before, the cold certainty that he was witnessing the beginning of the end for the Zarn Dominion, unless, of course, the Dominion could find a way to destroy this Terran Federation before they fully established themselves in the sector. And Lazar knew exactly who would be tasked with developing such a plan. Grand Strategist Velar stood before the High Council of the Zarn Dominion, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the Chamber of Decisions. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed tactical simulations of various engagement scenarios between Dominion forces and the newly discovered Terran Federation. Every simulation ended the same way, with the annihilation of Dominion forces. "This cannot be accepted," declared High Chancellor Zyron, his ancient face twisted with rage. "You are telling us that this upstart civilization possesses technology that renders our entire military obsolete?" Velar's expression remained neutral despite the Chancellor's tone. She had spent 6 months analyzing the data brought back by Captain Lazar, consulting with the Dominion's best scientists and tacticians, and her conclusions were inescapable.
"The evidence is clear, Your Eminence.
The Terran Federation's technological capabilities exceed our own by at least 2 centuries of development. Their energy weapons, defensive systems, and faster-than-light technology are all significantly advanced compared to our own."
"How is this possible?" demanded Councillor MZ, the oldest member of the High Council.
"The Dominion has ruled this sector unchallenged for 3,000 years. We have absorbed the technologies of hundreds of conquered species.
How could we have missed the existence of such a power?"
"Because they weren't here," Velar explained patiently. "Based on our analysis of their wormhole technology, the Terrans come from a distant part of the galaxy, perhaps even another galaxy entirely. They have only recently expanded into our sector."
Fleet Admiral Jorn, now promoted to Supreme Military Commander after Veric's disgrace, stepped forward. "What are our options, Grand Strategist? Surely the mighty Dominion can find a way to overcome these humans?"
Velar gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show a new simulation.
"There are 3 potential strategies.
First, we could attempt a massive, overwhelming assault with our entire fleet. The simulations give this a 7% chance of success, with an estimated 93% loss of our forces." Murmurs of dismay rippled through the council chamber.
"Second," Velar continued, "we could attempt to develop countermeasures to Terran technology.
Our scientists estimate this would take between 50 and 70 years, during which time the Terrans would continue to expand their influence and likely develop even more advanced systems."
"And the third option," prompted the High Chancellor.
Velar took a deep breath. What she was about to propose was anathema to 3 millennia of Dominion policy.
"We negotiate. We establish diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation and seek a peaceful coexistence." Outrage exploded across the chamber. Councillors leapt to their feet, shouting objections and accusations of cowardice.
Velar stood impassively until the High Chancellor raised a hand for silence.
"You suggest we treat with these creatures as equals?"
Zyron asked, his voice dangerously quiet.
"That we abandon our divine right to rule over lesser beings?"
"I suggest we adapt to a changed galaxy," Velar replied calmly.
"The Dominion has survived for 3,000 years because we are pragmatic.
When faced with a superior force, the wise choice is not to rush into destruction, but to find a new path forward." Before the Chancellor could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber, a serious breach of protocol that silenced all present. "Your Eminence," the aide gasped, "Terran ships have entered the Dominion core systems.
At least 30 vessels, including what appears to be their flagship."
Chaos erupted again, but this time with an edge of panic. The core systems were the heart of the Dominion, containing their homeworld and most important military installations.
No enemy had penetrated their defenses in the entire history of the Empire. "How?" demanded Jorn.
"Our defensive grid should have detected any wormhole formations." "They didn't use wormholes, Supreme Commander," the aide explained.
"They just appeared.
Our sensors detected a strange subspace distortion, and then they were there.
Veeler's mind raced. A new form of FTL travel, one that bypassed conventional space entirely. The technological implications were staggering.
They are hailing us, Your Eminence, the aide continued.
Their flagship is requesting direct communication with the High Council. Chancellor Zarn looked to Veeler, his earlier anger replaced by something she had never seen in him before, fear.
Your council, Grand Strategist. What should we do? We should hear what they have to say, Veeler advised.
Their presence in the core systems demonstrates that our military options are even more limited than we thought. The Chancellor nodded slowly, then gestured to the communications officer. Put them through.
The holographic display shifted to show a Terran face, not Captain Jackson, but an older human with silver hair and a weathered face.
He wore an elaborate uniform festooned with medals and insignia. Greetings to the High Council of the Zarn Dominion. I am Grand Admiral Elizabeth Reyes of the Terran Federation.
I apologize for our unexpected arrival, but we felt a direct conversation would be more productive than continued misunderstandings.
Chancellor Zarn drew himself up to his full height.
You have committed an act of war by entering Dominion space uninvited, Admiral.
Your presence here could be deemed an invasion. The human's expression remained amiable, almost amused. If our intention were invasion, Chancellor, this dialogue would not be occurring.
Our presence here is a demonstration, not an act of aggression or a demonstration of precisely what, inquired V, stepping forward. Of the futility of military conflict between our civilizations, Rees responded.
We have been monitoring your strategic debates. V's evaluation as your grand strategist is remarkably accurate, and she warrants commendation.
A shiver passed through the assembly. They had been observing, listening to the High Council's most confidential deliberations.
What do you desire? Chancellor Zarn asked straightforwardly.
The same request we conveyed 6 months prior, an end to the Dominion's policy of conquest and subjugation. We propose a treaty that would recognize